Marcus lifted a hand slowly, hesitantly. His fingers hovered in the air, trembling with uncertainty. He had touched weapons, armor, broken bodies. But this was different. Finally, he let his hand rest on her shoulder. Her skin was warm, smooth but marked faintly with the glowing lines of her people's heritage. The queen closed her eyes, her body shivering under the weight of that simple touch. For her, it was not just contact. It was trust. It was surrender. "You said I was yours tonight," Marcus whispered, his voice rough, filled with conflicting emotions. "But I don't think that's what this is." Her eyes opened again, glowing faintly as she looked at him. "Then what do you think it is?" Marcus took a breath, steadying himself. "It's not about possession, it's not about claiming or conquering. It's about choosing. You chose to come here, and now I choose to stay." The queen's lips parted as if she wanted to speak, but no words came. Instead, she leaned forward, resting her forehead lightly against his chest. Her body trembled, not with weakness but with the release of something she had been holding too long: loneliness, grief, the crushing weight of being a ruler who had lost everything. Marcus let his arms move around her slowly, carefully, as if he feared she might shatter. His embrace was hesitant at first, but when she did not pull away, it grew stronger. For the first time since the war ended, he held someone not as soldier to soldier, not as enemy to enemy, but as broken soul to broken soul. Minutes passed in silence, but it was not the heavy silence that had haunted Marcus before. This silence carried warmth, carried meaning. The queen finally spoke, her voice muffled against his chest. "You do not realize what this means. My people, they do not understand this kind of bond. To them, closeness is weakness, trust is foolish, but you humans bind yourselves even in the darkest times. You carry one another's pain. I see it now, and I need it. I need you." Marcus closed his eyes, her words cutting deep into him. All his life, he had fought to keep others alive. He had carried pain so others would not have to. He had believed that was the only way to survive. But hearing her admit that she needed him, not as a soldier, not as a prisoner, but as a man, stirred something inside him he thought the war had burned away. He tilted her chin up gently so their eyes met again. "Then you have me," he said quietly. "Not as your possession, not as your prize, but because I choose to be here." For the first time, a faint smile touched her lips, fragile but real. It was not the smile of a queen who had triumphed, but the smile of a woman who had finally found something worth holding on to. That night they stayed together, not as enemies, not as conqueror and conquered, but as two souls who had carried too much pain, finally daring to share it with each other. It did not heal their scars. It did not erase the war, but it created something new, a fragile bond, a spark in the ashes. And Marcus realized that perhaps this was the true strength of humanity, not in their weapons, not in their victories, but in their ability to reach across divides, to touch even those once called enemies, and to build something no battlefield could ever destroy. The night passed slowly, like a quiet river carrying them both forward. For Marcus, it was the first night in years where he was not woken by gunfire in his dreams. For the queen, it was the first night she did not feel alone inside her own palace. The silence between them was no longer heavy. It was no longer filled with ghosts. It was simply peace. When morning light spilled through the tall windows, Marcus opened his eyes. The queen was resting against him, her silver eyes half closed, her body relaxed in a way he doubted anyone had ever seen before. She looked less like a ruler and more like a soul who had finally set down a burden. For a long time, Marcus simply watched her. He thought about what had happened, about the choices made, about the strange path that had brought him here. Once, she had been his enemy. Once her name alone had meant death for his people. And now she lay beside him, not as a conqueror, but as someone who had chosen him. The weight of that truth pressed on him. Could he truly accept it? Could he allow himself to hold her, knowing the blood that stained both their hands? His thoughts were interrupted when she stirred. Her eyes opened fully, glowing faintly in the sunlight. She looked at him quietly, as if searching for regret in his face. But Marcus only met her gaze steadily. "You stayed," she whispered. "I said I would," Marcus replied. His voice was calm, but inside his heart was steady, in a way it had not been for years. She exhaled softly, as if letting go of a fear she had carried all night. "You do not know what this means to me. My people will not understand. They will see it as weakness, as betrayal. But for me, it is life. It is hope." Marcus studied her face. "Then let them see what they want. We both know the truth. The war took everything from us. If we can build even a little hope out of the ashes, maybe that's enough." Her eyes softened, and for the first time she allowed a tear to escape. It shimmered down her cheek like a drop of silver. Marcus reached up and brushed it away with his thumb. Neither spoke for a while. They did not need to. Their silence now was not emptiness. It was comfort. Finally, the Queen broke it. "Do you know why I said those words last night? You're mine tonight." Marcus tilted his head slightly, waiting. Her lips curved faintly. "It was never about taking you as my possession. It was about giving myself to you. I needed to say the words to remind myself I could still choose, that I could still feel, that I was still alive." Marcus's chest tightened. He had thought of those words as dangerous, maybe even arrogant. But hearing the truth behind them gave them new meaning. She had not claimed him like a prize. She had given him the chance to choose her in return. "You're not mine," Marcus said softly. "And I'm not yours. We're just two people who survived, and maybe that's enough to start something new." Her hand found his, their fingers intertwining. "Then let us start," she whispered. The morning light grew stronger, filling the room with warmth. Marcus felt something he had not felt in years. Something fragile but real. Hope. Not the kind shouted in speeches or painted on banners, but the quiet hope that comes when two broken people decide to stand together instead of apart. He looked out the window toward the skies that had once burned with fire and war. Now they were calm, blue and endless. He thought of the men and women who had fallen, the price humanity had paid, and he knew he would carry them always. But he also knew they had fought for something more than death. They had fought so that one day someone could choose life again. The Queen rested her head against his shoulder, her voice no more than a whisper. "You humans, you burn even when the universe tries to snuff you out. You carry fire where others only see ashes." Marcus closed his eyes, holding her close. "We don't burn alone," he said softly. "We carry each other's flame." And in that quiet palace, where once only hatred had lived, a human soldier and an alien queen built something the war could never destroy. Not victory, not surrender, but hope. But he wondered, was that strength or was it madness? He had seen humans push beyond their limits, yes, but often at the cost of everything. Perhaps it wasn't strength at all. Perhaps it was desperation dressed as courage. "I am not what you think I am," Marcus said at last, lifting his gaze. His voice was rough, like gravel dragged across metal. "I'm tired. I'm broken. I've seen too much death. Whatever you think I carry, it's not what you need." For a heartbeat, silence stretched between them. Then she shook her head slowly, her silver hair brushing against her bare shoulders. "You do not see yourself clearly, Captain. But I do. You think your scars make you weak. I see they make you real." Marcus felt something twist in his chest. He had been praised before, by commanders, by fellow soldiers, for his courage, his ability to endure. But those praises had always been about what he did on the battlefield, never about what he was. Yet here was his enemy, the queen of the fallen empire, telling him that his pain itself meant something. He wanted to argue. He wanted to tell her she was wrong. But the words caught in his throat, because a small, dangerous part of him wanted to believe her. Her eyes softened as she stepped closer. You think I chose you because of your rank, your victories, but I chose you because you did not break. Even in ashes you stood, and I need that strength. Not for my crown, not for my empire, for me. Marcus stared at her. He could not deny the truth in her eyes. He could see the shadows of loss, in her face the cracks in the armor she once wore. She was not offering him power, she was not demanding his loyalty. She was asking for something deeper, connection, understanding, and that terrified him more than any weapon ever had. Because Marcus realized that the war outside might be over, but the war inside him was only just beginning. The silence between them grew heavier with every breath. Marcus stood, his fists clenching as if the ghosts of battle were still around him. He had listened to her words, to her fragile honesty, but something inside him rebelled. A voice inside his chest screamed that this was wrong. You speak of scars, Marcus said, his tone sharp and low. You talk of ashes and survival, but do you know what your fleets left behind? Do you know what I saw out there? The Queen's silver eyes flickered, but she did not interrupt. Marcus's voice trembled, but not with weakness. His anger carried it. I saw colonies burning. I saw children crying in the dust while your soldiers hunted them down like animals. I buried men who were my brothers, covered them with my own hands while plasma fire still rained from your skies. Do you think I can just forget that? Do you think standing here looking at you makes it vanish? For a moment, the Queen did not answer. Her face remained calm, but her eyes told another story. The glow inside them dimmed, like a fire struggling against the wind. When she finally spoke, her voice was soft. I do not ask you to forget. Then what do you ask of me? Marcus snapped. To forgive you? To hold you and pretend the blood of my people isn't on your hands? Her voice broke just slightly, the smallest crack in the armor she carried. No, I ask you to see me. Not the fleets, not the crown. Me. Marcus turned away, his breath heavy, his chest tight. He wanted to hate her. He wanted to keep her face, forever tied to the screams of the dying. But when she spoke like that, bare, vulnerable, stripped of all pride, he felt something pulling against his anger, tearing at his resolve. The Queen took a step closer, her bare feet silent against the polished floor. Do you think it is easy for me to stand here? She asked quietly. To face the man who brought me defeat, who tore down the empire I was raised to rule? Do you think I do not carry the weight of every order I gave, every life I condemned? Her voice trembled now, but she did not stop. You carry your scars on your body. I carry mine inside. I am not free of guilt. I am not free of pain. But here I stand, not as your enemy, not as your ruler, just as a woman who has lost everything. Marcus's throat tightened. He could feel the war inside him, pulling him in two directions. On one side was hatred, sharp and hot, reminding him of every fallen soldier, every burning world. On the other side was something quieter, but just as powerful, the understanding that she too was broken. That behind the silver eyes and alien skin was someone who had bled, someone who had lost, someone who now reached out to him not with orders, but with trembling honesty. You want me to see you? Marcus said slowly, his voice almost breaking. But when I see you, I see the woman who gave the command that killed men I loved. The Queen lowered her gaze for the first time. Her voice was a whisper. And when I see you, I see the man who shattered everything I was meant to be. But still, I am here. The words struck him harder than any blade. She was right. She had no reason to come. No reason to bear herself before him, not as a queen, not as a ruler, but as a person stripped of her pride. She had chosen this, and that choice meant something Marcus couldn't quite name. The silence returned, thick, with emotion. Marcus closed his eyes, his fists trembling at his sides. He was not ready to forgive. He might never be, but he also knew he could not deny what stood in front of him. A truth deeper than war, deeper than victory or defeat. For the first time since the battles ended, Marcus realized the hardest struggle was not fought with weapons. It was fought with his own heart. Marcus stood with his back to her, his breath unsteady. The room felt smaller now, as though the walls had drawn closer, pressing down on him. The silence stretched, and in that silence he heard echoes. Voices of men long gone, faces of friends who would never return. They told him not to give in. They told him to remember what she had done. And yet another voice whispered from somewhere deeper. It asked him what good hatred had ever done except keep wounds open. He clenched his fists tighter. His scars burned with memory. He remembered the boy who had joked with him in the trenches, who had died only hours later. He remembered the young medic whose hands shook as she tried to save lives she couldn't. He remembered the commander who had looked him in the eye and said, "If we fall, make sure you rise." The Queen's soft voice broke the storm of memory. "Captain," she said gently, "I cannot undo the past. I cannot bring back what was lost. But I can stand before you and admit my weakness, and I can ask you to choose." Marcus turned halfway, just enough to see her from the corner of his eye. "Choose what?" She stepped closer, her silver eyes reflecting sorrow and hope at the same time. "Choose to let hatred rule you, or choose to see what stands here now. A broken queen. A woman without a crown. Someone who does not demand but asks." Marcus swallowed hard. The war had been about orders, about following without question. But this moment was different. This was not about duty. This was about choice. His choice. He turned fully now, meeting her gaze. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then Marcus's voice came quiet and low. "If I say yeah, if I step into this with you, it won't erase the past. Nothing will." Her expression softened and she nodded. "No, it will not. The past will always remain, but the future does not have to be the same." Marcus's chest tightened. He had never been a man of many words. He had always let his actions speak for him. And right now his heart was caught between two actions: turn away or step forward. To turn away would be safe, the easier road. To step forward would be terrifying, uncharted. He closed his eyes for a moment, feeling the weight of it all. The cries of the dead, the silence of the survivors, the broken empires, and then the fragile chance standing in front of him. Slowly, he opened his eyes again. His voice was steady this time. "I can't promise forgiveness." Her breath trembled, but she did not look away. "I do not ask for forgiveness, only that you don't walk away." The honesty in her words struck him harder than any weapon. She wasn't trying to be a queen. She wasn't trying to be powerful. She was just asking him to stay. Marcus's heart thudded. He realized then that maybe strength wasn't about holding on to anger. Maybe strength was daring to let something else in, even when it felt impossible. He stepped closer. One step, two, close enough that he could see the faint lines of exhaustion on her face, the way her hands trembled though she tried to hide it. "If I choose this," Marcus said quietly, "it's not because I forget the war. It's because maybe I don't want to keep living inside it." For the first time since entering his room, the Queen's silver eyes glistened, not with power, but with something human. Tears she did not let fall. "Then that is enough," she whispered. And in that moment Marcus understood that this choice was not about surrendering to her. It was about reclaiming a piece of himself that the war had nearly destroyed, the piece that still believed in something beyond hate. Marcus stood close enough now to feel her presence. He could hear the soft rhythm of her breathing, could see the faint shimmer of her alien skin in the dim light. She was so different from him, her form, her voice, her entire being. Yet, in this quiet moment, she did not feel like a ruler of another species. She felt like someone who had stripped everything away just to show him the truth of herself. The Queen's silver eyes searched his face, waiting. Not demanding, not commanding, just waiting. For the first time, Marcus saw fear in them. Not fear of death or defeat, but fear of rejection. Fear that he would turn away now and leave her exposed in the raw honesty she had shown. The war had ended only 3 days ago, but the memories still clung to Captain Marcus like smoke that refused to leave his lungs. He sat on the edge of the bed in a room that was far too large, far too silent for a soldier who had lived with the thunder of battle for years. The walls were made of smooth silver stone, glowing faintly as though they held the light of captured stars. It was beautiful in a way, alien and cold, but to Marcus it felt like a cage. He was not chained. He was not locked in. The doors opened when he approached them. The servants bowed when they brought food, but still he felt like a prisoner. This was the palace of the alien queen, the same queen who had once commanded fleets that darkened human skies, the same queen whose orders had left human cities burning. And now somehow he was her guest. The victory had not been clean. Humanity's fleets had bled across the stars. Thousands of ships were gone. Millions of lives ended. Yet somehow, against every prediction, against every cruel calculation of enemy machines, the humans had stood. They had fought with nothing left but their stubborn refusal to break, and in the end, they had won. The queen had surrendered, her empire shattered. And Marcus, a soldier who had survived too many battles, found himself taken to her palace instead of sent home. He sat there, staring at the floor, his hands trembling slightly. He told himself it was exhaustion, not fear. A soldier wasn't supposed to be afraid anymore, not after what he had faced. But in the quiet, when there was no gunfire, no commands shouted in his ear, fear found him. It was different now, sharper, heavier. He was not afraid of dying. He was afraid of not knowing what came next. The silence pressed against him until even the sound of his own breath felt too loud. He closed his eyes, trying to push away the memories. The sight of friends falling, the sound of ships cracking, apart in the void. He told himself to breathe, to rest, to take advantage of this strange peace. But rest was a stranger to him now. Then it happened. The door slid open without a sound. Marcus stiffened instantly, every muscle ready to fight though he had no weapon. His eyes darted to the figure that stepped inside, and for a moment he thought it was a dream. She moved like shadow and fire, her steps soft on the cold floor. The queen. She was not wearing her crown. She was not surrounded by guards or wrapped in the robes of power. She came alone. She came quietly. And as Marcus's eyes followed her, he saw the robe she wore slide from her shoulders, falling soundlessly to the ground. For a heartbeat, time itself seemed to stop. She stood before him, unarmed, unguarded, her silver-marked skin glowing faintly in the soft light. She did not look like the untouchable ruler who had once commanded entire star systems. She looked human in some strange, terrifying way. Her eyes, silver like liquid metal, locked onto his with a weight that made his chest tighten, and then she spoke. Her voice was soft, but each word struck like a blade wrapped in silk. "You're mine tonight." Marcus's heart thudded in his chest. He had faced alien beasts, burning skies and death countless times, but nothing had ever left him so uncertain as those words. She was not giving him an order as a conqueror. She was not claiming him as a prisoner. It was something deeper, something he could not yet understand. For a moment, neither of them moved. The silence returned, heavier than before, but it was not the empty silence of his loneliness. It was charged, alive, trembling with something he could not name. The war was over. The galaxy had shifted. But here, in this quiet alien room, a new kind of battle was beginning. One fought not with weapons, but with hearts. And Marcus, though he didn't yet know it, was about to face the hardest choice of his life. Marcus didn't move at first. His training told him to stay alert, to be ready for a trap. He had been taught to expect deceit from enemies, to never let his guard fall. Yet this moment felt different. The queen had not entered with guards, she had not come with weapons, and she had not spoken like a ruler giving orders. She had spoken like someone making a claim, personal, raw, and filled with meaning he could not yet understand. His hands curled into fists on his knees as he looked at her. The robe still lay on the floor, untouched, like a symbol that she had shed not just fabric but the power it represented. She was the queen of a fallen empire, yet she stood before him like a woman stripped of titles and pride. Her silver eyes never left him. They glowed faintly in the dim light of the room, and Marcus felt a shiver travel down his spine. He was used to enemies trying to dominate him with fear or strength, but this was something else. She wasn't trying to scare him. She was showing herself. Vulnerable. Open. "You broke my fleets," she said softly, her voice carrying a strange mix of sorrow and respect. "You stood when others knelt. You fought when surrender was the easy choice. Now I claim you." Marcus's jaw tightened. "Claim me?" he asked, his voice low, cautious. "I am no one's property." Her lips curved slightly, not in mockery but in something like admiration. "Not as a prisoner, not as a servant. I claim you because you are unlike any being I have known. Your kind, you burn in ways we cannot. I need that fire near me. I need to understand it." Marcus's heart pounded. He had seen soldiers die with courage. He had seen ships hold their ground when defeat was certain. He had seen humanity refuse to kneel, again and again, even when the cost was unbearable. But hearing those words from her, the very woman who had ordered his people's destruction, felt like salt in an open wound. "Why me?" Marcus finally asked, his voice quieter now, but sharp with suspicion. Her gaze softened, almost tender. "Because you stood in the ashes and still looked forward. My people cannot do that. We crumble when our power crumbles, you humans. You rise again. I watched you. I fought you. And when the galaxy told me you should have broken, you refused. That is why you, Marcus. That is why tonight." For the first time since she had entered, Marcus felt something shift inside him. He had seen her once far away on the battlefield screens, a figure of unreachable power. He had imagined her as untouchable, merciless, yet here she was standing in his room, bearing her soul more than her skin. He tried to push it away. He tried to remind himself of the horrors her fleets had brought to his people. But the truth was right in front of him. She wasn't speaking as a queen. She wasn't speaking as a conqueror. She was speaking as someone who had lost everything and had chosen, in this moment, to reach out to the one person who had taken it all from her. Marcus looked down, his thoughts storming inside him. Every instinct told him this was dangerous. Every scar on his body told him she was his enemy. Yet something in her voice and her presence reached deeper than hatred. Something fragile, almost desperate, lingered in her words. Finally, he lifted his eyes and met hers again. "You think I'm stronger than I am," he said quietly. Her silver gaze did not waver. "No, I think you are human. And that is enough." The silence stretched between them again, but it was no longer the silence of emptiness. It was a silence filled with unspoken truths, with wounds that neither of them could hide. And Marcus realized that this night in this alien palace was not about conquest or surrender. It was about two broken souls standing in the ruins of war, searching for something neither of them could name. Marcus sat frozen for a long moment, her words echoing in his mind. "You are human, and that is enough." Simple words, yet they carried a weight heavier than any chain. He had been called many things in his life, soldier, captain, survivor, but never had someone looked at him, scars and all, and said that simply being human was enough. He wanted to push the thought away. He wanted to remind himself who she was, the queen whose fleets had scorched colonies, whose soldiers had hunted his comrades through forests and deserts, whose voice had declared war without mercy. But when he looked into her silver eyes, he didn't see the cold ruler of the empire. He saw something else: exhaustion, pain. A woman who had lost not only her crown, but her certainty. Marcus leaned back, his shoulders heavy with the burden of survival. He had lived through things others hadn't. He had seen starships crack in half and heard the cries of dying soldiers over the comm. He had pulled friends from the dirt, only to watch them fade away in his arms. Survival had not been victory for him. Survival was just survival. And yet she stood before him, speaking as if his survival meant something greater than he could understand. "Why do you say such things?" Marcus asked, his voice quiet, almost broken. Her eyes flickered, the glow dimming slightly as she took a step closer. "Because I must learn," she answered. "My people, we built an empire on strength, on fear. We thought power was enough to last forever. But when you broke our fleets, I saw the truth. Power fades, fear dies. But something in you humans does not die. Even when all else falls, you rise. I want to know that flame. I want to keep it near me." Marcus lowered his head, staring at his scarred hands. The words cut into him because they were true. Humanity had no great technology compared to her empire, no overwhelming weapons, no endless armies. What they had was something harder to explain. They had stubbornness, they had defiance. They had the ability to keep walking forward even when the path was made of fire and blood.